Thanks for coming to our school.
Thank you so much, Christine. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join today. Um, as Christine said, I've had this incredible privilege of being able to work on a couple of different shows, but the latest show that I did for 9 seasons. It was called, or is called, This Is Life. It was airing on CNN, and you can find episodes currently on Discovery Plus if you have that, but also you can probably find some of the episodes on YouTube because CNN is no longer producing the show. But what was really incredible for me as a journalist is over the course of the last 9 seasons, I've been able to work on such a wide range of stories about different things that are happening in America and different subcultures that exists in America. And I've always believed that the more we know about each other, the smarter we become, and ultimately the better. We become better people as a result. And I think these days, especially in the wake of the pandemic, I think so many of us have found ourselves so much more isolated from people and unable to engage in ways that we used to engage previously. And I think that we also have fallen victim to these kind of echo chambers or these silos, because inevitably we are all these days on social media and we follow the people who believe the same things we believe, right? Who espouse the same values, the same ideas that we believe, and we in some ways cut ourselves off from other ways of thinking, right? And so when we exist in these silos or these echo chambers, we continue to only hear and know certain perspectives. And I think that it's really, really important to once in a while or more often than we do, open ourselves up to other ideas, different ways of thinking. And as Christine said, she and we have differing political views and different opinions about certain things, but it's so important, and that's okay. And we can still love each other and respect each other. And that's the way it should be. But unfortunately, these days, I think that because we are existing in these echo chambers where we're only hearing from people who believe the same things we believe, when we hear from other people who think differently, we become predisposed to becoming really angry. And that's when things like the tensions start to rise. And I think most of you these days have probably seen that unfold in social media and online. It just seems like there's just like this political tension and tension in kind of like our conflicting value system. And so much of that, frankly, has to do with our online behavior and our social media activity. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to work on this episode about screen addiction, because you guys really are one of the first generations that have literally grown up, right, with devices in your hands. And while social media and technology have made our lives so much easier, I mean, we would not have been able to get through the pandemic and been able to maintain our education had we not had access to these different platforms. And we would not have been able to really stay as connected with our friends and what was going on in the world had we not had technology. Revolutions have been inspired by Twitter and other social media platforms. I mean, you see what's happening in Iran, for example, this women-led revolution that probably could not have happened if it weren't for the likes of Twitter and these social media outlets that have allowed people to come together and to kind of show up to protest. The protests that happened in the wake of the George Floyd murder, that was also, people were communicating about where people were showing up to protest. And, it has been revolutionary in so many really positive ways. But what I don't think people realize is that when we are on these platforms, and every time we click or every time we input information, these tech companies are collecting data on our behavior, right? And so if I'm on YouTube, for example, and I put into the search, COVID vaccine deaths, then immediately my whole feed is going to get populated, right, with like information that probably supports what I inputted, whether it's true or not, whether it's fact from fiction. And that's what becomes really dangerous is that it's becoming harder and harder to figure out what is true and what isn't true. And again, when you grow up with these screens in your hands that were designed to addict us, right? Every feature on our device, the colors that these apps choose, right? They were designed to keep you on longer because that's the way these companies are able to monetize what they're trying to do. But in doing so, let's say you're in a dark place, right? And you start Googling or looking up information, and you're trying to find out more about what you're feeling. Well, inevitably, the more you seek that information out, the more it will deliver information that may plant seeds in your heads. You know what I mean? These algorithms, they push you in the direction that they think, and let's face it, these algorithms, they're starting to even think for us. They will give you this information and lead you down other paths, maybe even darker paths that you are on. And in so doing, it's starting to, in some ways, even control the way we think. And it's been really important for me, as someone who's been watching this happen, to try and sound this alarm, because especially for young people who may not understand how these algorithms work, you might think that everyone is receiving the same information when in fact we're all receiving different information. Like I'm looking at Andrew and Lennox. We probably have very different ideas and things that we're interested in, but based on our consumption of information, my news feed or what Google will deliver to me will be very different based on very different from what Google delivers to Andrew and Lennox, for example, based on the information that they are inputting. And so we're all existing again in these bubbles, and rather than all of us receiving the same information, it's sending us into all of these different directions. And I think that's, I really feel like it is the result, or it is becoming just increasingly dangerous. And that's why I think it's really important for all of us, particularly young people, I think, to recognize that control, so that you can rebel against it in some ways, or that you can practice habits that are healthier because you are informed about the control that this technology is having on the way we think. And one of the reasons why this episode in particular, and we produced this episode about three years ago, the thing that really struck me was the young woman who was featured, a young girl named Morgan. She was 15 years old and she took her life. She was this beautiful, straight A student, popular in school, and her mother was a behavioral health nurse. So she knew all the signs to look out for. And one day, truly out of the blue, Morgan ended up taking her life. And when, as you saw, when law enforcement took control of her devices, they came back to Morgan's mom and said, "Did you know that she had a Tumblr account? She had a Finsta. She had established this identity that her mom had no idea of. In fact, some of the platforms she was using, her mom had just had no clue of. And her mom really believes that had Morgan not been spending as much time on these devices, she would have probably sought out more human contact. I mean, again, while technology has been incredible and has made our lives easier and more efficient, I ask all of you whether you spend more time, right, on your devices trying to in some way seek validation from people you may not even know in the form of like likes, right, on social media, then you even interact with human beings. And we know that human interaction, person to person interaction, eye contact with other human beings is essential for essential for someone to have sound mental health. um, and what Morgan's mom told me was that, not only was Morgan spending so much more time on devices than she was with human beings, but she had her device in her bedroom at night. And, at nighttime, all of our senses are sort of weakened, right? We're exhausted. We are not thinking as clearly. We inevitably become more vulnerable to, to things that are emotional. And when you have a device in your room, in those moments in the middle of the night or late into the night, when you're already tired, those things can really affect our our brains in ways that could be more adverse. On top of all of that, our brains, particularly young people's brains, they're still in this like prime stage of development. A young person's brain is in that stage from birth. Now they've even extended it to like 25 years old. And so when your brains are still growing and developing, when you when you're going through hormonal changes, right? You're already sort of confused about what's going on in your bodies. You're then assaulted with unlimited amounts of information, things that you might not be ready to even see, and this applies to your age group probably less than it applies to young people like maybe 10, 11, 12. But you guys probably had devices in your hands at that age too, right? When you were going through those really kind of awkward, uncomfortable periods of development. And when you think about that, the dopamine levels in your brain, and how when you're swiping, it's like that constant need to get stimulated, right? And it's swipe, swipe, swipe. And for me, I still subscribe to regular newspapers where you have to like open, because I find, and I read actual books. I don't read books on my device, because I find that when I'm holding a newspaper or I'm holding a book in my hands and I can fold down the page, or I can even underline things, it's much more tangible. Whereas if I have a device in my hands, whether I'm reading a newspaper or a book, I find that I often read a headline and then I just swipe and swipe and swipe. And it doesn't I don't retain that information in my brain. I just find myself just kind of like, again, just kind of going through those motions. And that excessive activity and that behavior, I think, becomes ingrained in our brains. And so, look, I realize that there's never going back. Technology is not only here to stay, but it is our future, and all investments are pointing in the direction of even smarter technology. So we'll have to think even less. I mean, I don't know if you guys have downloaded ChatGPT yet, but ChatGPT will write your papers for you. We'll write your essays for you. We'll do your homework for you. I mean, I think teachers can probably still differentiate. Like if you turn in a ChatGPT essay, it'll be so perfectly, the grammar will be so perfect, and it'll be written so immaculately that your teachers might be like, how did that happen all of a sudden? But what it's also lacking is also the heart and the experience, right? It's ChatGPT is a collection of everything that it can collect online, right? And so it can't really even differentiate between fact and fiction yet either. But nevertheless, this technology is becoming so smart that we really have to consciously, I think, fight against it so that we empower ourselves and train our own brains, right, to be able to continue doing this kind of work, to be able to have um, to be able to have in-person experiences that allow us to have more sound mental health. I mean, there will come a time with the development and advancement of AI, artificial intelligence, where you may not ever have to go to a concert again and wait in those lines because you could sit front row at a Taylor Swift show with an Oculus headset on your eyes and never have to wait in those lines or deal with Ticketmaster, which sounds exciting, right? You might be able to visit the Colosseum in Rome from the comfort of your own home and never even have to go there, which also sounds democratizing and will give people an opportunity who may otherwise not have been able to experience that themselves, or not be able to afford doing those things. So in some ways that will be democratizing, but on the other hand, it further removes us from human to human interaction. And I think those are the kinds of things that we need to just be aware of as we embark on this new era. I think that the more we know and the more we are equipped, the more tools that we have in our toolbox, when things start to really radically change, I think the better equipped we will be able to be to respond to a lot. And also just to recognize the importance of putting all the technology down when it's starting to really affect your mental health, and engaging in person to person communication and relationships. And so for me, it's been really important also as the mother of young children to not only sound the alarm, but to have discussions about what's really happening behind the scenes, how these algorithms are controlling the way we're thinking and in many ways pushing us in different directions. And so that was really the rationale, the reason why I wanted to work on this episode. And I'm hoping that this can be a really informal discussion where I can engage you all about what you thought of the episode, and maybe I'd love to know about your relationship to technology and how you may be trying to find that balance, or whether you think that technology exerts too much control over your own lives and behaviors. And one more thing before I open this up, I don't know if you heard that in New York City and other parts of the country, there are these groups that are calling themselves Luddite clubs. And these are clubs that consist of high school students and college students who are intentionally doing away with their smartphones and only carrying flip phones because they resent that technology has such control over their brains. And so they have decided that they don't want to use smartphones. They don't want smartphones on their person, right, on their bodies. They want to communicate with flip phones if they have to communicate, but they meet several times a week and they talk about books that they're reading, like actual books that they're reading. And they are in some ways going back to how things were, but they're really realizing that they've been missing this connection. They might have a zillion followers on social media, right? They might be connected to a zillion people on social media, but that they've really been missing that human to human connection because they've been so absorbed and, for lack of a better term, addicted to the lives that they're leading in the digital space rather than in the human to human personal space. Um, so with that, I wonder if anyone has any questions or comments. I mean, I'm curious about how you see your relationship with technology in your life and whether you think that it has too much of a control on you or you figured out a way to find balance. And anyone feel free to just, you know, raise your hand. And I don't know how, Christine, how you
Hmm.
generally.
Yeah. Yeah. So after watching the episode, did anyone feel like, yeah, go ahead, Samantha. Savannah, sorry.
Hi. Um, well, I really related to that part of the episode where you went to that research institute and they monitored your stress levels while you were, you had your phone next to you and you were trying to complete a task. Like I can totally relate to that. Like even just trying to do schoolwork, like having my phone and having social media has been really difficult. Um, to like it's made it more difficult to try and do schoolwork um,
Savannah, do
effectively.
you find that when you're, I mean, this is what happens to me. If my phone is sitting up near me when I'm trying to read a book, I can't get through that book. I can't get beyond like 3 or 4 pages before I just have to like check to see if, someone sent a message or, check, who's posted on social media. I mean, when you think about it, it's crazy. Who cares what's been posted on social media? And if any light or thing flashes, it completely takes me out of what I'm doing and my attention fully go. I mean, and again, like that's how these things were designed. As Tristan Harris in our episode said, every feature was designed to do exactly that, to pull you away from anything that you're doing, any relationship, anything, to get you to respond to it. And they employ, these tech companies, the highest paid sociologists and psychologists to figure out what devices or what little gadgets or sounds or haps is what they're called, that will pull you away from what you're doing. And quite honestly, when I think about that, like it's like duplicitous to me. Like it really angers me, and I'm offended, um, because in some ways, it's not even our fault. I mean, I know a lot of parents are kind of going through this with their kids, and a lot of people say, well, why don't you just be a stronger parent? Do a better job parenting. Or as a parent, I get mad at my kids when they can't get off devices, and it's not their fault. These devices were designed to keep them on, to addict them, so that they literally, like, something happens in their brain, and there's like a behavior shift. And so I have started to I just, because my kids are 9 and 6, try to just ban it outright all week long, because I know that I don't want to put them in the position, right, to where they are on it and then I have to get them off it. It's just like it's this pull that, again, goes beyond their own conscious ability to just end, right? It's the pull of this technology that was designed to invoke this kind of behavior. So thank you for that, Savannah.
Thank you.
Hey, Zoe, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first off, Miss Ling, I what you said about like the club of like high schoolers and college, like what was that club's name again?
They're called Luddite clubs, Luddite. And a Luddite is someone who kind of disavows technology at all, completely. It's kind of just like it's sort of this old school term, but I think it's really cool that it's been reintroduced in this way.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too because like as a person, as an old school nostalgia fan myself, like I watch a lot of movies and TV shows where characters are, having a good time and living in the moment, and this that generation, like they didn't really have that much technology. I mean, like just a little bit, but like they're like reading, like like you said in the quote, like they're reading actual books. They're having engaging conversations, and like I talked to this with my parents too, and it's like I feel like in my parents' generation, like if they like would have so much of this technology back in the day, they would be addicted to it. And it's like no, like honestly, they would be addicted to it. And I think they also said like technology, like it's starting to become like a little bit better for this generation, but I feel like it's starting to become worse, like in the scariest way, because like the news and like they're talking about like some commercials about like like how cars, like self-driving cars, like like you're in a car and like you're just like not driving at all, and like they're like making like these different types of robots and they're putting like these machines in like everyone's bodies. Like it's really scary. Like it's not just technology with social media, it's with just with everything in general. And I think I hope like like clubs like this, like what I cause like we can try to like have like more like social conversations and just live in a moment and like just try to like keep off with technology.
I hear what you're saying, Zoe. I personally am kind of excited for self-driving cars because I actually think that that will help keep us a lot safer if everybody is in self-driving cars. I don't know if we will ever get to that place, but I'm hoping that my kids never have to learn how to drive because it totally terrifies me. But and so, like I said, there has been a lot of amazing things and so much good that has come of technology, so much. But at the same time, again, like I think when it starts to control you, you're so right. These days, I think we can't just have a conversation or have an experience without taking a video of it so that we can post. We can't just like experience the moment, right? Or just look at something for its beauty. And I am guilty as well. Like I am, I love recording things, right? And displaying them. I think the difference for someone like me though is as an adult, because I didn't grow up with it, I can make that distinction. I mean, for me, when I'm on social media and I see that a group of my friends got together without me, I feel that pang of like, they didn't call me, But I'm an adult, and so I realize like, whatever, I get over it. I think to myself like, I didn't want to put makeup on anyway. Right? But for you guys, I imagine, right, when a bunch of your friends get together and they don't call you and they post it, how does that make you feel? Like pretty lame, right? Like it's hard to get over that because you feel like everybody is there and they don't post just pictures of them having like a really boring lame time. They post pictures of them having what seems like the best time. And so it like compounds those feelings of rejection even more. And when you think about it, or when I think about it, those were like the worst aspects of high school for me, like feeling kind of left out, feeling like I wasn't popular. Now on social media, it's like putting a magnifying glass up to it, right? It's making all that, it's not only were you not invited to something, but now you weren't invited to something that everyone can see, right? And it takes a really strong individual, not just a kid. It takes a really strong individual to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay with that. I'll get over that. Tomorrow's a new day. And, I can get through that. It's really hard. And when you think about young people who are already, vulnerable, I know I grew up as one of the few Asians in my high school. There were like 5 Asians in my high school. And I hated the fact that I was different from everyone else. I was a popular kid. I had a lot of friends, but I was always reminded of the fact that I was different. Like I was called Risa Ring every day and just teased relentlessly. And honestly, like it was a stressful time in my life. And if I had had social media, right? And I had seen, the popular kids get together and, I not be invited or whatever, that might have sent me to a really dark place. And then what happens when you're in that dark place, as I said, right? You're already feeling bad and you start going down this rabbit hole and, inputting stuff about feeling bad. And then you see things about kids who are doing things to them. You see how that starts to spiral. And what upsets me is that it's not your fault. It's feeding you. Like it's this beast that's just like feeding you and sending you down these rabbit holes. And that to me, the girl Morgan who we featured, you could see when the cops confiscated all her devices, you could see the progression, right? When she started, something may have happened. She was a popular kid, right? But something may have happened. Maybe she wasn't invited to a sleepover or something that her friends were doing. It could have been one thing. Maybe, her parents were divorced and they had a fight or something. I don't know what it was, but it may have started with one thing that made her feel bad. But then the longer she stays on and starts, asking questions or looking for things that support the way she's feeling, then the algorithm starts to collect all this data and then just sends her continuously or increasingly into a darker and darker hole, to where almost everything that you're pulling up is just like darkness. And that's what you think is all around you. Again, because we get in these like silos, right? We get into these bubbles where it's just like, it's just darkness. It's hard to see beyond that sometimes, especially if you're already hurting. And so, we wonder why mental health issues are such a big deal right now. So many more young people are dealing with it. Well, the reason I think is my generation, we went through our own things, but the reason why I think numbers have exploded is because this is a generation that the difference between this generation and my generation, for example, is devices and that onslaught of information, and how our prefrontal cortex has been impacted by this onslaught of information. So is this interesting to you? Like, how does it make you feel when to know like how much control these algorithms have over the way we think, that they're even starting to even think for us?
Or does anyone feel like that this is a valid point, that you do feel like when you're on your device or on social media, that affects your mental health?
And by the way, some of you may actually think that everything I'm talking about is crap, that it's been so beneficial for you and it's allowed you to come out of your shell or whatever, or, like, please, this is a totally open forum. There's no wrong answer. So if you think that what I'm, that you have a contrary opinion, please feel free to share that. I'm really curious to know, on the converse.
Mm-hmm.
Emily says in the chat, I do feel it has affected me negatively. Cami says it's terrifying. Reagan says, I really like everything you said, especially the part about feeling left out and the algorithm adapting to your emotions. I'm actually making a YouTube video about why social media is bad right now. I think a lot of people don't realize the bad impact of it, and I want to share that with people. I love that, Reagan. And that's one of the reasons why I so love those Luddite clubs, because it's kids themselves. It's not parents who are forcing them to stay off of technology. It's the kids themselves who have become so incensed and upset about the control that technology has over them. And so they are initiating. And I really think it helps to have these clubs, right? So that you don't feel alone when everybody else, is so like attached to their devices, and you want to kind of do something different. it's hard, right? Because this is the world we're living in. So I love the fact that these clubs are coming together so that kids can support each other in this. Because it's really it's hard. And I think that's one of the reasons why parents are struggling, because parents know that it's affecting, having a negative impact on our kids, but we also don't want our kids to be the only ones without technology. Kelly says it's affected me both negatively and positively. And Zoe says it affected me both negatively and positively. I wasn't aware of the social media platforms because I desperately wanted it. My parents gave me the reality of that kind of technology. Sorry, I'm so blind. I'm trying to read these little words. I'm sorry. Kelly, I wonder if you would be willing to talk about or elaborate on how it's affected you positive and negatively. I don't know if I see Kelly here. Sorry to put you on the spot, Kelly.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I turned my camera off for a second. I mean, yeah, like seeing people like seeing my friends hang out without me makes me feel like terrible, because it's like, did I do something wrong? It's like, I don't know. But then it's helped me, or I don't know, like I mean, it's helped me kind of like make like new friends. I don't know. I feel like now that I think about it, it's affected me more negatively than positively. But like, I feel like there's still some, I don't know. Sorry, I'm kind of like going in circles here.
I know it's
Oh,
hard.
why
I
did
mean,
my-
for me, I think social media has, I'm someone who's really, I stay on top of the news, and I really, there's a lot of messages that I try to get out, whether it's about race related things, about education, about gun control. Like, these issues are really important to me. And so social media has given me an opportunity to be able to share on a much larger platform a lot of these issues. But when I really stop and think about it, like when I really stop and think about like how how reliant we are on it, would my life, would my mental health be better and healthier without it completely? Definitely. Like, if I could just stay off of it for a while, I actually think I don't think I need all that information coming at me. Like, I got off Twitter pretty recently because I really am kind of disgusted with Elon Musk and how he's been using Twitter, and now he's the new owner. And at first it was really hard to get off of Twitter, because Twitter is the one social media platform where you can get all this like news very quickly, and you can find out about things right away. So when I got off of it, I was like, oh, I was kind of like jonesing for it, like a drug addict. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I was looking at all these news outlets, but then I was like, God, I just felt after a little while a lot calmer, and nothing about my life changed except that I was less frenzied, which in some ways was a really good thing. Christine, or Ms. Han, you are taking a little digital detox, right?
It was not planned, but I think your episode sort of primed me for thinking about that. I mean, it sort of primed me like, oh, like I am really the fact that, when you were talking in the episode about how all these people are behind the apps, and their whole purpose is to keep you on that app longer. Suddenly I felt like this little pawn every time I went on, Instagram. And then like a few days later, my 16-year-old daughter was like, what are you going to give up for Lent? And I was like, what? Since when do I give up anything for Lent? And then, but that kind of stuck with me. Like, if I were to give something up, like, what would that be? And in the past, I never would have said, oh, actually, maybe I would have done social media, but I thought, I wonder if I could do social media, because I'm actually a huge overposter. I love to post. I am on, and I don't try to do like, oh, look at my life, isn't it wonderful? I just feel like I think it's fun. I think it's a fun way to connect with my friends. when people so I thought maybe I'll just take a break from social media. So I took it off my phone, and and so it really changed. I do carry my phone around with me, but I used to just any moment, like in the bathroom, before I go to bed, when I wake up, like waiting for something to microwave, I can just like swipe, 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 like just really quickly, like check my Instagram or Facebook. And I just like now that it was no longer on my phone, like the only thing I can check is like my alarms and my calendar and my email, which barely is changing. So it just like slowed down the distraction. Like because I was always staring at my phone, always sucked in. And it's been strange because you think it's connecting you to all these people, but it's really like it was just distracting my life. I mean, most of what was on my news feed, I really didn't care about either. It was like kind of random people. So it's been actually nice. And I feel like I have become a bit of a Luddite, not by getting a flip phone, but just by taking those two apps off my phone. And now it really just is a phone. I mean, I love it for GPS, but other than that, I feel like, and when I go back to, if I do go back, I can still access it like maybe on my computer, but I just realize how little control I have from not going on there every single moment of like every free moment I have. And it just was like, it was such a time suck too. It just was a time and distraction, like pull. And like, my husband's like sitting on his side of the bed looking at his phone. I'm on my side of the bed looking at my phone. Someone's on the couch looking at their phone. Like I felt like there's like no interaction going on in this family, so it
Well,
just,
yeah, and these days, I mean, I'm sure everybody here, will go out to dinner with a bunch of friends or will be hanging out with a bunch of friends in person, and then we're all on our devices looking at social media, right? It's like you're with other people. Like it's so one disrespectful, but like who cares what's going on in social media? You're in the presence of your friends, you know what I mean? And we're all, again, I think we're all victim to it because it's pulled us in. Again, that's what it's been designed to do. Like it's messed with our brains. And it's hard, right? I realize like when I'm with friends, if I'm at a dinner party or if I'm at someone's house, I might check like my text messages or my emails, but I will not open social media when I'm with other human beings because it's like, who cares what anyone is posting on social media? Like, who cares? You know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of you guys are on TikTok. TikTok is like, everybody's TikToking these days. I don't know if you heard this, but TikTok is made by a Chinese company. And the version of TikTok that the Chinese company sends out to the rest of the world, like the version that we use in America, it's just mindless stuff. It's just like you could stay on it for hours just looking at like random videos of just like nonsense, nothing that like stays in your head. The version of TikTok that kids get in China is all science and math and educational stuff. And kids can only stay on it for 14 minutes, 14 to 20 minutes all day long. And recently they did a big poll and they asked thousands of American students and thousands of Chinese students what they wanted to be when they grew up. The majority of American students said influencers. The majority of Chinese students said astronauts or scientists. So it's really interesting. Again, like, like the time that is kind of is wasted. It is a time suck when you're on TikTok. I mean, like hours could go by, right? You get stuck and you're just like scrolling. Hours go by. It's like, where did that time go when I could have been reading a book, right? Or doing something productive. Instead, you're just swiping, right? Stuff that's not staying in your head. So again, like it's not to condemn anybody, because in so many ways it's not our fault. It's mind control. But I do think that once you are armed with the information, you know what's going on behind the scenes and beneath the surface, and how these platforms and algorithms and how this technology works, you might be better able to make more informed decisions about how much you use it, where you keep your devices at night and when you're with friends, and so on.
Kelly, you had your hand up. Did you want to share something?
Yeah, I was kind of backtracking a little. Like I haven't had my phone for like reasons for like the past 3 months, and it's like it was really hard at first, but like I got used to it. And like now when I'm with my friends, it's just like they're all on their phones, and I'm just kind of sitting there like I don't know what to do because they're just all on their phones, and like I'm just like I don't have one. So it's like I don't know.
Do you miss not having it?
Sometimes, but it's kind of nice not having it too.
Mhm.
Well, and that's what, as the mother of little kids, um, my daughter had a sleepover here one day, and like all of our Wi-Fi went out. And my kids kept asking, like, what should we do now? What should we do now? In the past, when we were growing up, we would have found things to do. We would have been creative and, did some role playing or done something. But the problem is now, like, kids are so, like they'd rather be on devices than do anything else. They literally even can't think creatively about what to do outside of technology. And that's really kind of scary when every second of your idle time is spent, like, you can't even just sit anymore and just kind of like look at the sky or look at the beautiful, like the world around you. We can't even sit anymore. We have to just, like, all that idle time has to be occupied by being on a device.
Zoe, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, for technology for me, like it kind of like did affect me for negatively, especially when the pandemic started too. Because when the pandemic started and I had to do like online school, like it was really bad. It was really really terrible because I I feel like I couldn't do anything. Like I was stressed by doing homework all day, and I was really stuck on my like my devices too. And it kind of like, and for all the stuff I've been reading on for my like for like technology, like for movies, TV shows, it kind of made me hate the entertainment that I enjoy watching so much. But then I realized that it's all about entertainment, and it made me like lose my like positivity on that. And I had for 2021, like I stopped like I stopped believing things what people were saying on like the internet, and I got back to like living the moment. And like what you said about TikTok and like about the version of America and like and China too, which I it's something that I wasn't really surprised, but I was like surprised at the same time because everyone wants to be like a social media influencer and like make like $1,000, but they don't really know how to like actually do that. So yeah, like I'm still in the process, like here, like I think like some of us are still in the process here, but yeah, maybe for like one day, like I could like take a moment off of my devices and like have fun with my family and friends. Like like I know that won't be easy, but I can at least try.
Thanks, Zoe. I love what everybody's writing. Oh my gosh. Should I read what everybody's writing? Emily said, like, when I go on platforms like Insta, I'm hit with all these people that go over and beyond on filtering their photos, making them look way different than they actually are. They just put an unneeded expectation on people's brains. Daniela said, I feel like it's important for younger people to realize that social media isn't a real place. Totally. Savannah said, a few weeks before watching the episode on screen addiction, I decided to delete Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat from my phone after watching the episode. I feel motivated to stick with my decision. Oh my gosh, Savannah, I want to hear how that's been going, like all of those apps. And Kylie says, yeah, I don't like when people are constantly on their phone when you're trying to have a good time with them. Savannah, how's it been to not be on any of those social media apps?
Well, I have been on them like a lot less, but just on my laptop. Like I don't go on them on my phone. And it's been really great. Like, cause like it makes going on social media like a lot more intentional. Like if I wanted to go check my messages and then just get off, like it takes a lot more effort to go and do it now. And so I've noticed that I spend a lot less time on these platforms, and I spend my time on my phone, kind of like what Miss Han said, just calling people and using it for directions and stuff. And it's been a lot better. It's helped me with my attention problems when I'm focusing on schoolwork, and I think it's been really positive. And it's nice to still have access to those platforms, but just on my laptop, so that there's a few extra steps instead of just hopping right on my phone and getting.
Was it really hard to like go to stop or take them off your phone?
Yeah, at first it was really difficult, but I also noticed an immediate difference in how well I was able to focus on just being in the moment. And so I think like the benefit of being able to see how immediately it affected me, like really convicted me on how damaging social media is to mental health and to focus in general. So I think I'm gonna stick with that long term.
Did you notice a change in your mental health, or did you feel like your mental health had improved?
I did, yeah, for sure. It's difficult, like when your life doesn't really match up with the other people's lives that you see on social media. And it kind of makes you want more out of your life when those people probably don't even have what they're showing on social media. It's all kind of a show, a lot of it. And so it kind of helps you to be more grateful for the life that you have, and not be so envious, I guess, of what other people are doing. And yeah, it just helps it helps me live in the moment a lot more. So I've been enjoying it for sure.
I love that. Well, you're such an inspiration. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Shaden has her hand up. Hey, Shaden.
Hi. So yeah, your little thing about, everyone always being glued to their phones whenever they're out with friends. I am part of a softball team, and like whenever we have our breaks, I always just see everyone on their phones. And I have kind of a unique situation with my phone. Like I did not get it until I was 13. And even then I had to pay for it with my own money. So I had to like work hard to get it. And even then, my phone only works on Wi-Fi. So when I'm out at a softball field, I don't even bring my phone with me. But it's always interesting to see everyone on their phone. Meanwhile, I'm trying to have a conversation with people. And I think that it's a very interesting thing to see how people cope with the awkward silence in a conversation just by looking down at their phone, other than working through that awkward silence and talking with people. And they kind of just look at it as a comfort source, I feel like, where they can just be like, oh, we ran out of things to talk about. We can just look at our phones and be satisfied. Meanwhile, they aren't actually being satisfied. They're just trying to cure the awkward silence, which.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that Shaden, like again, I think our brains have been wired now. Like those, it's almost like this, like we're being pulled literally to fill those awkward moments or those silences with technology. It's like it something has happened in our brains. I mean, and that's kind of what addiction is. Yeah, I mean that is what addiction is. Like you cannot stop thinking about that drug. I mean, there's so many parallels to me to drug addiction with this, like the jonesing for it, like the inability to just kind of like get through a book, or even when you're watching another screen, right? You're watching a show, like you have to check your your device. Like to me, the parallels between tech addiction and drug addiction like could not be more real. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, we are at the 1:15 mark, and so I know people have places to go, and I just appreciate you coming. I want to read Asia. Asia. I believe that we depend on screens and technology so much that we begin to lose our creativity and forget how to live. Absolutely. And this is my fear for the younger generation, especially our kids, the younger kids, those of you who have younger siblings. Oh my goodness, like that scene at the Waldorf school, and the teacher was saying, if they're on their screens, what are they not doing? And I think of all these kids, like everywhere I go at a restaurant or whatever, waiting, I mean, I understand, you don't want your kids screaming at a restaurant, but I feel like that's like the go-to way to soothe our kids or to entertain our kids. And it it concerns me that they're going to miss out on really so many things. So much development that happens that's not staring at a screen. So yeah, and I think you said the Surgeon General, can you remind us what the Surgeon General came out and said about?
Yeah, the Surgeon General of the United States, Vivek Murthy, recently said that age 13 is too young for social media. But as most of you know, like there's that whole like wait till 8th grade before you get a device. And, parents, I think when their kid gets a device, I don't know if they limit social media as well. Most kids, when they get a device, get social media. I mean, and frankly, Google is social media. YouTube is social media. It's not just Instagram or Facebook. And so the Surgeon General actually said 13 was too young. And I agree. I mean, quite honestly, I don't think kids should have like uh, uh, access to the internet on their phones that they're on is on their body until like 17, honestly. Like they can have it on their computers at home, but to have all that information on your body at all times when your brain is still developing is, I don't know. I personally think it's really dangerous. It's too much for our brains to handle, even adults, But when you're developing, I think it's too much. So, well,
Yeah.
guys, thank you so much. I so appreciate your insightful comments and thank you for sharing your experiences with technology. And I hope that this has been interesting and that you might take what we've talked about and think about how it relates to your life and your friendships and relationships. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.